caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Yeah. Oh no. I was a little bit slow in the draw there with the with the audio, but you know.
Okay.
She didn't care.
Good morning.
Let's just get into it. It's another day. It's November 3rd, 2021, as we approach the close of the year, and my chair keeps falling down. I caramba. That's all I could say.
All your life you will remember this night, and you'll know whom you have turned loose upon the world.
Yeah. That's what you'll know. Okay. Anyway, the face is a little bit, yesterday I thought the face looked a little bit thinner. I don't know. Maybe it's the hat. Vanity. Okay, so we're here, and we got a show. So, what do we start with? How about
Weekend.
No, it's not the weekend. How about we start with
the Weather Watch forecast?
And here we are looking at the latest satellite view of North America, a piece of North America. Not most. Some, the former United States. And as you can see, the clouds, basically are, day by day, those who follow this are thinning out more and more. So you can see where you live. But there's a lot of clear or just like partly cloudy skies here and there. As I say, in my neck of the woods, if I can actually access that, it's currently 34 degrees outside. 34 degrees. Sunrise today is 7:48 a.m. on the East Coast, or here actually. A little bit earlier, right, on the coast itself. But, of course, this Sunday we'll be setting the clocks back. So, technically on Sunday, this would be, everything, it'll be 6:48. That kind of thing. But then it keeps getting, the days get shorter leading up till December 21st. So, we'll get back into it. The whole thing is kind of ridiculous the way they do that. Anyway, today's a Wednesday, and the high is going to be 45 in my neck of the woods, 28 overnight, and consistently for the next several days here, it's going to be the same story. Mid-40s in the day and the high 20s at night, though on the weekend it looks like it's going to get up to 50s, and then the nights will be in the 30s, which... isn't really that much of a reprieve. But like I say, as you can see, it's fairly clear. No major storms on the better part of the country. Looks like I don't really see anything that looks, maybe the Pacific Northwest. There might be some high elevation snow. No, not really. Northern California, Nevada. It was all clear. So, unless there's something going on up there in Oregon, Washington State, there's heavy clouds up there. Looks pretty good. And, on the coastal areas, yeah, I'd say fairly clear, just cloudy. So, that's... The
Weather Watch forecast.
Yeah, that's that. The Weather Watch forecast. Actually, that's not really a forecast. That picture, that's a satellite photo, NOAA photo that was taken about an hour or so ago, actually. That's like People who watch this show live, which no one does, don't realize that they get the news, the weather, everything like pretty much right. It's live. So speaking of the news, I'm not a TV news person, but let's just look at the Google News for the sake of it. For those who are just getting up and are curious about it, looks like the big deal they were making out of this governor's race in Virginia didn't work out. I guess it says Politico put it best opinion. Terry McAuliffe bet on voters hating Trump. Turns out they dislike Democrats more. I just love the language of the headlines, how they can't, they just can't accept, something, that headline by someone else might have been, saying Trump's campaigning proved to be the deciding factor in the Virginia governor's race, right? That's not like a pro-Trump statement, but it's true, right? Instead of turns out they dislike Democrats more, and then you've got the Wall Street Journal. What Virginia election says about 2022. It says nothing. Minneapolis voters reject bid to replace police with public safety department. Well, that's a no-brainer. When push comes to shove, this small group of crazies don't matter. The people want to know that if there's somebody breaking in their house, they can call the police. They don't want to call like a counselor and someone saying, "Oh, just relax. Well, you may get hit with a bat or shot, but life is challenging." Public safety counselors, look, you like it or not, that's just the way it is.
And I want my favorite DJ to give everybody the word. Who's on the turntables tonight, my son?
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
My son.
Your papers, please.
We're back to the old, it's the old liners here.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
My head's still a little bit messed up. I didn't have the greatest night of sleep last night. I had to take a pill, something called on Dancetron ODT, Tab Resi, whatever that's supposed to mean. Dissolve one tablet. I just got like weird. I don't know. I was going to take my blood pressure, but I don't think I have a problem. I don't have a fever or anything. But yesterday I was getting like my head was sweating, and I did it was like a bad heartburn. And I fortunately have this pill, and it was getting really bad, almost to the point, So fortunately, I have this pill. You put it under your tongue, and it within a minute, I was fine. I mean, the side effects of this thing are, it says dissolve one tablet in your mouth every 8 hours as needed for nausea or vomiting. Used by date 7/22, so at least I can hang on. I don't have many of these things. But this happened to me once before a couple of months ago. I ended up going to the hospital for it because I was very confused. Because what happened was it was like heartburn, it just wouldn't go away. But there was never a resolution to it, really. I don't know. I had some blood tests and stuff like that. I just happened to coincidentally have a doctor's appointment today. So I'll ask them, and since this is my show, you know.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello. Coffee tastes like burnt almost. And that's the way I describe it. It's just, I guess that's what some people would call strong, but at least it's hot for now. That's why you see me drinking a lot in the early part of the show. Sorry about that. Because, I mean, it's 4:36 a.m. in the morning. Who the heck is, so I just basically got up. Well, I got up around 3-ish. And anyway, the title of this show is Freedom is Fun, just like I already have on the thing. And I had said freedom is this all, underneath that it says freedom is a state of mind. And I'm just putting up my first chat, which says follow your bliss, right? Freedom is fun. It's a state of mind. Follow your bliss. Forget about all the politics of the world and all that stuff and all the craziness. And this idea is like a lot of people just don't know, like that.
Making up the rules as we go along.
It's like, as you get older, some people are lucky. They just like, they don't have any problems. And the thing is, it's like I eat healthy. At least every other day. Like today I'll be walking like a mile or two. I'll be seeing a doctor. I had like a high fiber breakfast. I mean, I'm taking amoxicillin, because I have this tooth thing, which did I tell you I did get I have an appointment in about less than a month. So that's another thing I have to ask the doctor about. Remember to ask about. I'm taking this little card. Let's see. Antibiotic length. That's good enough of a tip for me. But it's kind of annoying that you do. You get sun. I mean, I know I'm healthier. In the summertime, I do seem to have less problems. Though, it's not entirely true, because it was like in July is when I had the last time I had that problem and ended up going to the hospital wondering what it was. But though I think it was originally based on the teeth, and I was popping a lot of, yesterday I took a ibuprofen 600 because I was like, I was having like, I thought I might be coming down with a cold or something. But I really wasn't. And I had this ridiculous, super healthy breakfast. And I just show you, this is normally where I show the grow room thing, but I didn't even put it in here. Let me put it in here. I think I transferred it over. What did I call it? Yeah, it's in here. Okay. This is going to kind of look weird. And I've got to filter this to just like normal. That's my like cooking pot. We don't want any U shifts here or anything. Let me just even this out. Computers and computing. Contrast 0. Brightness. Well, I don't know why that's acting up weird. But I think you can get the idea anyway. Anyway, this is my stainless steel pot. And underneath this, it just kind of looks messy and stuff because it's like heated, hot, and whatever. But what I do is, and that's like some Parmesan cheese I added. This is like the tomato sauce, which you get lycopene from. At this point, I think I was using fresh tomatoes from my backyard, maybe some pieces of zucchini, and of course the turmeric and black pepper. So in other words, you were getting your lycopene, turmeric, right? These are anti-inflammatories. And of course, broccoli is like really one of the healthiest foods, and that's like, you know, it's like been connected to anti-cancer. You know, they do a lot of research on that. And the white things here are chopped garlic, fresh chopped garlic. And so what I'll do is I'll take a spoon and I'll just gradually press that in. This is the moment before I would eat this. Press that in, because you don't want to cook your garlic. Like people over steam or boil your garlic, but I mean broccoli. You don't want, people like steam it, but they steam it till it's like they steam everything out, the good stuff out of it. Tastes good, cooked and steamed, but you're not getting the benefits. Same with garlic. You know, roasted garlic is freaking delicious. Even like minced garlic and all that kind of stuff. And I use that as a seasoning. And I put it on things. But if you want to get the allicin or allicin, however you pronounce it, from the garlic, you have to eat it like 5 to 10 minutes right after you chop it, and you have to eat it raw. So what I'll do is I'll just gradually press this down into the top of the soup, and I'll take a spoon and I'll get a piece of garlic or two and broccoli with a little bit of sauce, and then put that and then eat it. And that's the first phase of consuming this healthy soup, which is more like a stew, whatever. And so I do stuff like that. So I eat this ridiculous stuff. For in breakfast, it's like I've got flax meal, yogurt, cinnamon, raw honey, some kind of, raw oatmeal, unprocessed oatmeal. And sometimes I don't have it currently, but I'll always have things like blueberries or stuff like that. I could have chopped an apple. I should have, because I've had apples in the refrigerator for a while. But I mean, that's like what I eat. I don't eat, and if I do eat what so-called, like I had, some chips a couple of days ago, but they were like flax meal or, multigrain tortillas type of thing. And if I make a sandwich, I don't use bread. I use wraps, and I use these Mission wraps, which are like the highest in fiber. So they're high fiber. And when I was getting fresh tomatoes from the garden, I would put a tomato in there, slice up a nice fresh tomato, just fresh picked from the vine. Maybe some Swiss cheese, which has some good benefits, if I'm not correct. I think Swiss cheese has zinc in it. I'm not sure. Let me see here. Like I say, I don't like to say things. Swiss cheese benefits. Let's see. I know both the protein and calcium found in Swiss cheese contribute to healthier, stronger bones. Proteins, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I get that. That helped my teeth. But Swiss cheese, I thought there might have been zinc. I was thinking zinc. I might be wrong on that. Let's see. What cheese is high in zinc? Swiss cheese. Yeah, 1 ounce, 1.2, 11%. So it's the highest in zinc. Oatmeal has zinc. Low fat, almonds have zinc. So, this is just... So if I do make a sandwich, I use thin sliced, like the super real razor thin slice. So I'm not like over dairying out. And I'll put some olive oil, and I'll even on a sandwich, on a tomato, I'll put some turmeric and black pepper. Right? Maybe some fresh oregano or some spices I grow, or from a spice jar. and I'll have that. Sometimes I put mayo on it, just regular pure mayonnaise, nothing with like super processed, none of the like brand stuff with added corn fructose or any of that garbage. Just basically eggs, whipped up, whatever. You make your own mayonnaise if you want to with like olive oil, I forget the formula for that. Let me see here. You whip this thing up. Let's see. Homemade mayonnaise recipe. Let's see what they're saying. Foolproof mayonnaise. How to make. You need an egg. Well, let's see. Prepare your processor. These people are. Anyway, you can make it with, and I've done it before. I don't do it, but anymore. But you can just take olive oil and like an egg and whip it up, blend it up or something, or whip it real, with a whisk or something. And you can, and then in that, if you were using like some kind of food processor or, blending type of device, if you really wanted to, you could put some fresh garlic in there. Make the mayo for your sandwich that you're going to consume right away. Put the turmeric, black pepper, olive oil, the garlic, fresh garlic, and the egg in, and then blend that up, and then use that, spread that on your wrap, and then add a fresh tomato with lycopene and a piece of Swiss cheese. It's like going to taste delicious as anything, right? Fresh tomato, the mayo. But you're getting like lycopene, allicin from the garlic, turmeric, anti-inflammatory, right? Oh, and and I'll put a piece of kale, fresh kale from the garden, which I still have some kale, and I have some in the refrigerator. And I noticed yesterday when I was out in the backyard, I had to go to the back, the garage. I have a detached garage that's way down the end by my mini greenhouse, and I noticed there's still some kale growing. So, because kale, like the cold weather, like kale overwinters. It doesn't grow in the winter, but I mean, it doesn't die from a frost. It'll just like recover. And then I'll put a piece of kale on it. I mean, do you understand how healthy that wrap is? Kale, tomato, lycopene, turmeric, garlic. You see what I mean? Zinc, protein, from the egg, from, the cheese, dairy, for the bones. You know what I mean? The egg. And it's like really not a high calorie either at all. And it's healthy. And you got oatmeal and blueberries for breakfast with like plain yogurt, but you add some raw honey and some cinnamon. These are all like antifungal, anti-inflammatories, And then I make these like ridiculous soups, the same way. I mean, that's predominantly my diet. I mean, occasionally I'll have something else. But like, even if I have like ice cream, it's like frozen yogurt. And if I add something to it, I'll put in this like 85% cacao, dark chocolate type stuff. Or I'll even sometimes put flax meal on top of the ice cream or something like that. And so I really don't understand. And then I get, in the summertime, at least I try to for 5 to 6, for half the year, best I can, is to get enough sun, get natural vitamin D. So half the year I'm getting daily vitamin D from the sun. And now I'm taking vitamin D, like a D3, little gel cap with my meal. And that's fat soluble, so I'll take that when I have one of those like stew type things, because there's, olive oil in there too. I forget to mention that. And the fat, good healthy fats. People don't understand there's healthy fats too. And and so that's it. That's my predominant diet. So even in a treat sense, or if I have, the few times these days that I get a chance to drink, I'll also have on the bar like these multi-grain tortillas. I'm not allergic to gluten or anything but usually the non-GMO, gluten-free, made flax meal and all that stuff. High fiber, multi-grain. And I'll make a homemade salsa, right? Because, chili peppers and, jalapenos, and I'll put olive oil, tomatoes, that's the lycopene. And I'll put garlic and broccoli and different things like that mixed in with that and all kinds of stuff. And it's, it's delicious, but it's a healthy treat, And then even like beer isn't really that bad for you, in moderation. It's a fermented beverage. I also I like snack on things like German sauerkraut, kosher dill pickles, as a snack, right? So I really don't get it. It's like, I tell people sometimes, it's almost as if I didn't do this stuff, I probably would be dead. Because I keep getting attacked. It's like,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
It's like I just constantly seem to have these things that like rise up, but my body like fights them off like that, And even a lot of times where I've gone to the emergency room because it was scary and an experience that I hadn't had before. And like I say, I'm not a hypochondriac, but when you're dizzy and you can't stand up, or you're like in breathing in pain, you go to the emergency room, right? Especially if it just keeps on going. But, you get there and it's like they take blood tests and, and then maybe they give you something, like I said, like I got this pill. And I just I still have a handful of them. They only gave me a dozen of them. And I think I've taken 3 out of that dozen, so it looks like I have about 9 left. So hopefully this, whatever that is, I'm going to talk to my doctor about it again today. But hopefully that doesn't occur again. But if it does, at least I have that pill. I mean, that's amazing. I think about people who take, I don't know if it was heartburn or what it was, but usually heartburn, you don't get this like, my head was wet, sweating from the head type of thing, and nauseous and just ridiculous. But this thing you put under your tongue, it's like, boom, 60 seconds. I don't know. Interesting pill. I don't even know what the heck it is. I'll find out today. It's the problem having like a doctor who's been retiring the past year. And when I see him, he just comes in the room like in a whirlwind. My file's like about this big. And he doesn't know. He's got so many patients and he's thinking about his retirement that he doesn't know. It's not like, he knows you. It's just times have changed. Wasn't that like on one of my title cards before? That's the medical profession, the idea. And part of it's not so much even the corporatocracy thing. I'm just on a babble here, which is nothing new for this show. But it's not so much where you just, big pharma, has gotten out of control. Well, there's no doubt about it. The profit motive, the greed motive, I would say, not profit motive, the greed motive of the healthcare industry, right? It's like the music industry. Once people start referring to artists and records as the product, and calling it an industry, what happened to, it's no longer an art form. You know what I mean? It's like, That's how indie, began. It was like people getting fed up with this, the industry, and them just screwing, artists over, through, for the sake of corporate greed. It's the difference between profit, free markets, healthy competition, and all that stuff. That's good, and that's lasted for years. It was, it was excellent system. But, these people just pushed it to the, to the limit. And so you've got the healthcare industry, the cancer industry, right? And big pharma, and of course, big tech is doing the same thing. They ruin software, they ruin the internet, they ruin everything else. But, that's part of it. Greed is part of it. But the other part of it is the population. Because I've often said this before, like the people don't realize this, and without getting political, is that during the Civil War there was only 30 or 40,000 people in the United States. Okay, that's why I keep trying to say when people try to push blame and say you should get down on your knees and have guilt or something, it's like the vast majority of people in the United States don't even have relatives who were here during the slavery era and that. The major influx of people into the United States, and then the subsequent building of the United States by those immigrants occurred in the late 1800s, after the Civil War, and and the turn of the and through the turn of the century. That was it. And then those same people not only built the infrastructure, if you think about it, everything happened from if you look from the 1880s onward, that's when this country really started to take over. And take off. And then those very same people that built all this infrastructure and innovated all this stuff, then they went over to Europe, because that's where their ancestors came from, and they defeated, the Nazis and Hitler, and fascism. You know what I mean? So, it's an interesting time, and an interesting thing to look at. And for people today, young people today, with these cardboard signs and going on these weird TV stations and saying, "Oh, you need to apologize for your whatever," it's like you don't even understand. What have you done with your life? What infrastructure did you personally build out, or did what war did you fight in, right, to save freedom, right? You see what I mean? They don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. So there were only 40,000 people, excuse me, around the Civil War time in the United States, period. By the early part of the last century, it was only about 100,000. Even with the immigrants from Europe, the wave of the people that built the infrastructure, and fought the wars and saved the country. There was only 100,000 people there then in the early part of the 20th century. And by the 1970s or so, in that general time, the population had doubled up to about 200,000 in the United States. But it was still pretty much empty, kind of. I remember driving across the country and there was nobody on the road. You'd occasionally see a car. You go through Kansas and the person passing you would wave at you, that's the way it was. And, life was good, things were affordable, and, everybody was happy, and you had a family doctor who knew you by name. And, heck, when I grew up, the doctor came in house calls with a medical bag, came to your bedside. That's like a true story. And that was universal. So, all that's changed. And so now we have like 330,000 or 330 million people. So, you go from like 30,000 to 100,000, then 200,000, and now we're over 330,000. So there's 300 million, I'm sorry. 300 million more there's 300 million more people now in the US than there were in the so-called Civil War times. And forget about like the founding days. I mean, you're talking about several million people. That's all. And, and remember that it was, like I said, we had a Revolutionary War against the British and, the people that were responsible for all the things that they're blaming on people who weren't even here. So anyway, that's just a fascinating thing. So what happened was its population is part of the problem, but I'm not an anti-population. Not like Bill Gates says we got to reduce the population, or Henry Kissinger, we got too many useless eaters or something. No, I think the planet can support, 10 times the amount of people. Because I've traveled around even in, before I retired. And all you see is open space and places like that. That's why I get angry at new home building, right, and developments. Because on my street, for example, they literally, because they had they must have got some money. It's like a government thing. There's got to be something behind it that, that's going on. I haven't looked into that, and I don't know how to look into that exactly. But I guess, I don't know anybody in the, city hall here, because I'm not from this place originally. I don't really know anybody here hardly. I know like a couple of people. That's it. I have like one guy I know as a friend, and then a couple acquaintances besides that. That's it. I just live here, basically, me and my cat. It's weird. But what I'm saying is that they demolished on my street alone, I don't know, a dozen or more houses. They were in disrepair and stuff, but were allowed to go into disrepair. And there's nothing there. They just like plowed down, put grass seed, and there's they're just nothing's ever going to happen. So instead of restoring these areas, and there were, excuse me, places where they could have put stores, like a big enough lot, that could fit, they could have put a Walmart, in town, in an area, or some kind of CVS or something like that. Anything to like make the neighborhoods, come alive, and people live and have people on the street. See, but everything's like against that. And then they keep building these developments in places, and they're built them. They're just stick homes. That's one of the reasons, like a lot of people they talk about the supply chain and all this stuff. No, it's like all the lumber that is like, they keep these developments, they're buying up all the lumber because they're building these stick homes out of 2x4s. There's a certain time when you could look at a development, right? If you drive by where they're building something. It's coffee. I could never get it to the point. And I hate over drinking coffee. It's just not one of those things. Anyway, if you pass by a development just at the right time, when they've got all the frames up, the sheer amount of 2x4s, and 2x6s or whatever, the sheer amount of it, and you see this stick village. Right? It's like this, And that's why the price of 2x4s and wood and lumber and, and then it's plywood and OSB on the roof and, and all this stuff. Totally unnecessary. Because practically in all these towns all over America, there's these empty lots, but they should have never even been empty lots. They were homes that could have been fixer-uppers. Mine's a fixer-upper. I got some problems, but you got to remember, I'm like I'm a freedom is fun guy, right? So I came here to live cheap. I left the rat race where I knew I could have stayed. I get offers. I mean, people probably doubt this, but I don't care. It's the truth. I have headhunters coming after me because of my life experiences and the jobs and everything I've done. And I get offered jobs that are like in six figures all the time, in the entertainment field and stuff like that. For major companies. And if I really wanted to, and if there were some jobs I could make seven figures. And I know people look at that like, yeah, well, what are you like, you can't even afford, why are you living like that? Because freedom is fun, that's why. And I'm getting older, and I didn't want, it's that line from Fight Club, the things you own end up owning you. And there still is going to be a day of reckoning in everyone's life where you reach the point when you do retire that it's a matter of like, okay, what do I have enough to sustain myself till I keel over? And so I just looked at it and said, I could keep at this game and do this, that, the other. But what for? The accumulation of objects, this, that, the other. Renting some place, or buying some expensive beach house. Well, the taxes on that would be outrageous. So the moment that I decided to retire, I wouldn't be able to keep up that beach house. The taxes would be higher than, my income, my retirement income and stuff. So it's like, you balance it out. I put in my book, the thing, a cost page. I put it in all my books, recent books anyway. I put these in, and like I say, these books are ridiculous. I read you this holiday horror stories in here. I mean, there's so much weird stuff in here. I mean, there's a get organized shopping list and January calendar, that you could blow up on a copy machine, But also, and I don't know, this is a really good book. There are typos and stuff in here, and that's sad. And I guess I really need to go through it and do that, because I was thinking of, getting some hardcover versions of this. Like, I don't know if you could see this house. I put some pictures in here. That home there, that, classic, they tore that down. It's like a Victorian thing with gingerbread and, really nice build. I'm looking, oh, here. Yeah, and so I even throw in stuff like this, like, so here's your monthly budget. Figure it out. Like I say, my books are really weird. It's like my shows. Like, this show is like no other. You know what I mean? It's really weird.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
And my music's the same way. I just do it. It's different. And so people don't know how to accept that. because it doesn't follow a formula. Like I don't fit a mold. But the idea is it comes to a point in life where, and this is what I was talking about with like illnesses and stuff. You know, we all get old. Some people are lucky, you know. I've known people, a friend of mine who's explorer, you know, the best shape ever, who, you know, had like open heart surgery. The picture of health. You know, unfortunately, he's doing fine, and he may be watching this. But, you know, he's recovering, and he's back out, you know, hiking and stuff. You know, but I mean, it doesn't really matter, you know. You get hit, you get struck down by these things as you get older in life. Some people just like, you know, they don't. And it's weird, and there's no rules to it. That's why, like I say, you know, don't following these diets, and there's certainly listening to stuff on YouTube or going to this, you know, these sites. Look at I had a couple episodes in a row where we were trying to find antibiotics, what you can eat, and this amoxicillin, until I finally found in a couple of places that said there were no food restrictions on amoxicillin. And I said, well, screw it. I'm just eating whatever. I'm going to keep eating healthy food. I'll ask my doctor that again today. And if she says, oh, no, you're doing the wrong thing, you know. But it's like, yeah, who are you going to believe? Certainly nobody on the internet. And, you know, just people say, well, you go keto, you know, like don't, you know, do starvation, fasting. You know, there's people who are on this paleo diet. You know what I mean? High carb Hannah. She's like one of those YouTube millionaire girls. You know, I mean, it might work for some people, but there's no one size fits all. There's no, you know, and you just can't. So you try and you try, but, you know, it just doesn't work. And that's why I say even the government putting its nose in the healthcare is ridiculous. Because, you know, there is no one size fits all. There is no one, you know, and they're trying to force people, you know, to be like as if we're one homogenized, you know, species or something, you know. And the fact is, we're so different, and it's sad in a way, frustrating. It's one of the struggles of life. It's not really talked about, but anybody over a certain age knows what I'm talking about. But some don't. Like I said, I've seen people who've, you know, I've known people's mothers who've like, you know, smoked cigarettes into their 90s and drank scotch and stuff, you know, and lived a life and, you know, died in their 90s, you know. My mother's 88 years old, you know, and she doesn't eat. She's not into any kind of gluten-free, you know, or crazy diet or anything like that. I mean, she'd like, you know, she has her share of health issues, but I mean, she's there. She made it, you know, past anybody who makes it past 77, you know, that's like the mortality age now in the U.S. Anybody who makes it to 80 is like doing pretty good. I'd love to make it to 80, you know. I hope I do. You know, I'd like to. You know, I like life. You know. But, you know, there's these things and they just come at you and you keep, you know, and you just have, it's just like a lot of people don't understand that. And so it's that struggle. That's one of the struggles of life. And that's another reason why I'm retired, because it's like, you know, I was telling somebody this even like a couple of years ago, because I had like cancer surgery 3 years ago. Knock on wood, you know, my next blood test is like in January to make sure, see if I'm clean. But it's not like I haven't along the way had all these other problems that keep cropping up from time to time, even though I live an active life, you know, like it's a tooth. Last night was this thing, you know, last month or 2 months ago was something else. So, yeah, it's just crazy. But you do what you do, and you live. But what I was saying was, I remember telling somebody probably a couple of years ago. It's probably after the cancer surgery and stuff. And I said, you know, I couldn't work. You know, if you look at what's happened to me over the past several years, you know, in and out of the hospital, you know, or having these problems, even when I wasn't in the hospital, I couldn't have worked. Right? I wouldn't have been able to have done my job right. So yeah, so that was like another factor. It was just like a side factor. It wasn't like I wasn't really in the front of my mind, but it was somewhere in the back of my mind. I mean, fortunately, I did retire because it could have been worse. You know, I could have been in a situation where suddenly I was like in the hospital, lost my job or income. I was self-employed towards the end. But, you know, lost my income and been basically screwed. So luckily, while I was still doing and had an income, you know, I bought this house, this cheap house in this cheap outskirts of town. It has its share of problems, and yeah, I didn't have enough extra cash to, you know, I've got a roof problem and issues. But, you know, it's the way life is. So follow your bliss. Freedom is fun, you know, and you never know if you're going to get sick. There's no magic formula to it. You know, everybody's got advice for you too. But like I say, you know, I eat the healthy foods, you know, I get the sunlight. I do, you know, I go and, you know, at least 3 or 4 times a week, I'm out there walking and breathing in fresh air, even in the wintertime. You know, taking the vitamin D or getting the sunlight and eating the healthy foods and the anti-inflammatories, the immune boosting, you know, foods, right? The antioxidants and all that kind of stuff. High fiber. It doesn't matter. You still get like hit with something, you know, you hit with the tooth thing, or you get hit with like this weird thing that happened to me yesterday, or, you know, that dizzy weird thing. Like, you know, I've had some really strange things happen, and the doctors have said to me, they go, that is somewhat rare, but it's not life-threatening, but it's quite rare. Like that time I was like dizzy and stuff, but it wasn't like vertigo. It was some odd crystal thing. Crystals behind some bone, behind the ear, some weird. It's very rare, but it's not life-threatening. Yeah. But when you're going through it and the first stages of it, I mean, when you first have it, it's like, well, I can't stand up. I can't walk. I have no, you know. So, yeah, it's weird. Life is strange. So you have to take the day, you know, every time you have a good day, you have to stop. And I say this often. You have to stop and say, you know what? I feel okay. And today's a good day. And I'm going to enjoy this day. And like I say, follow your bliss. That's a Joseph Campbell line. And it's like, you know, you got to. Because, you know, just around the corner is like, it's always something. Like I say, there are lucky people, you know. You know, whether it's luck or just randomness, the whole thing, the mystery of it all, who knows? The whole thing, everything is like, if you think about it, I know the show's getting into some weird areas, but, it's like, I don't know.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Sometimes it's nice to talk about that, the odd and the very, very different, Oh, no. Yeah. Sorry. So, yeah, life goes on. And you just, so people, that's why I'm not political anymore. So I showed you the political news, the photo of the day. Speaking of, to me, this is more news. This is the latest from a Spanish site in English about La Palma. And this is recent, So they're saying it's the 7th week of activity. 2,600 buildings now have been destroyed as of November 1st. New lava flowing into previously formed lava tunnels, which means like there's just a lot of lava. And last night I watched a little bit of live, and there was a guy who was doing like his cell phone-ish type of thing. And he said this, and there were earthquakes. There was like they've been having a heavy, some strong earthquakes. And he said this weirdest thing, and he was pointing his phone, I guess, whatever, with the sound on, and he goes, there was weird noise coming out of the volcano, and it was like this, I watched it for a while because I was like half expecting the entire mountain to just blow up, and who knows. Concerns about La Palma air quality following main cone collapse. Over 35,000 earthquakes and tremors recorded over the past month. So to me, this is more news than the Virginia governor's race. You see what I mean? Or saying whether the Democrats are popular or Trump, like, politics is such a meaningless thing. Like I say, it's like when you don't wish anybody to be sick, but if you are ever sick, you'll know that the last thing on your mind are things like politics, and money, material things and stuff like that. You know what I mean? When you think you're going, or a friend or a family member is going, you don't care about anything like that. And, this planet's going through some earth changes, not climate changes, earth changes. And, to me, this is much more newsy than, that other, than this garbage, right? Google News, network news, cable news, and whatever the sun, the sun's up to something. And the sun is the source of light and heat, and the biggest influencer of the climate on this planet. So people ought to get with it. But let's take a little interlude here and do our music feature of the day. And I was, yesterday I requested a weird song on my voice assistant. I was thinking of this. I could feature it. Maybe I should save it. Then no. I'll just say it. Because it's like, I was thinking of, for some reason, I was thinking of a song. It was a B-side of a single of a Beatles record. I don't even remember what the Beatles record was. And it was called You Know My Name, Look Up the Number. And I don't even know if that appear. I guess it might appear on some anthology that they made, over the past years. They keep repackaging this stuff. But I requested that song on my voice assistant. And I listened to it, and I realized, that I actually, because I remember when I first heard it many, many years ago, it sounded like discombobulated or discordant or something. But when I listened to it yesterday while I was cooking, making a soup like I showed you, not that particular one, but something similar to that, the song really it was like a loungy, it made sense from beginning to end. It wasn't, but I guess at the time I was into a different mindset with like, pop music or something when I was young. But oddly enough, after that song was finished, the voice assistant said, would you like to hear more music? Just request to play your soundtrack, right? Which is like, what the? And I said, okay, play, and it started playing like stuff that were like songs and artists that I had played, but the selection was like really good. And a lot of it was obscure, like the type of things that I would have chosen from different albums. And one of the songs played yesterday was Robert Palmer's Every Kind of People. That just popped in towards the end. Now, Robert Palmer's no longer with us. I don't know the story of how he died, when he died, but I'm pretty sure he died. But he's had not a couple, more than a couple. He's had some good songs, I mean, he was around the MTV times, he had those songs with the girls that were like pretending they were playing guitar and stuff on stage. But Every Kind of People, in this instance, it's, I'm pushing that song, for a couple of reasons. One, it's a throwback to an idea in a different time and a mindset. It takes every kind of people, that's what life's all about. Make the world, and, positive, upbeat music, right? Lyrics you can hear that aren't, weird like the stuff for the past 20 years. I mean, people came up with songs, and the diversity of artists was like incredible. If you think about it, when you look at like the pop charts or just the rock charts or country charts or whatever, R&B, when I say diversity, I don't mean in terms of like what people think diversity today. I mean diverse. So that so even within R&B area, if you took somebody like Al Green and then Marvin Gaye, but then you could have go back to like Temptations type of stuff, or Al Jarreau, which would throw you into almost jazzy, and you know what I mean? So like within each genre, there was diversity, is what I'm saying, not diversity of people. People are obsessed with it, these words these days. I just wanted to, clarify that. And so if you take the charts, like a top 100, what they would call the Billboard 100 or something, the diversity of music, whether it was even in a specific genre, but just even overall, and your own record collection, or CD collection, whatever it is, was until around the 2000s was filled with was like it wasn't formulaic. Everything didn't sound the same. And when someone did a formula, like sometimes you'd have a band would like get a hit, and then they would like the record company would rush out another song, and it was like they took the words, jumbled the words up, moved, changed, kept the same sound, but like moved a few, changed a few notes, and they'd put out this follow-up. And for some reason, it would end up being in the top 10, but you'd go like, oh, I can't, that sucks, right? The original was great. This thing was just some formulaic. And people knew that, and people talked about it. They said, yeah, that's like, I don't even know what's that. That was like payola days, because you're going like, well, what the heck is that doing on the airwaves? And because at that point, program directors and DJs had more say before the consultants. See, the first phase was consultants took over programming on radio stations. And then the second phase was, basically the buyout, of the destruction of radio by, what's the name of that company? Having the mind like mind in my mind that I've got so many different, I try to talk about so many different things on this show. But, then eventually it was just bought out. It's on the tip of my tongue. And you had some independent radio stations, but the rest were all basically owned, group ownership became the thing. And there were small regional groups, and then there were national groups that owned most of the stations. Clear Channel there it is. It's there. It's in the brain, Haven't gotten dementia yet. It's just when you shift from Joseph Campbell's Follow Your Bliss and talking about medical things, and then the ridiculousness of politics, and now you're into music. You got, there's a lot of little mental, roads and pathways being opened, corridors that have cobwebs in them that have to be opened up in your brain. I'm amazed at myself that I have this stuff this is unscripted. I'm just winging it. I just heard, Robert Palmer yesterday, so I put the image in the folder so I could pull it up. That's it. There's no script here. There's nothing here except Highmark, some things saying, trying to sell me some insurance or something. So anyway, Robert Palmer, Every Kind of People. And the idea is, it just reminds me of that idea that music was so diverse and different. And even within artists themselves, they would come out with a piece that was, different than their last, hit, so to speak. But, Robert Palmer's worth exploring. He had some, if you listen to, like, dig deep into Robert Palmer, on his albums, he has there's some interesting tracks that weren't hits. So you would have to have had the album. And so he was a overall interesting artist, and he had like I said, a number of hits. They were different, and he's got a library that's worth exploring. So I just thought I'd feature that. It just came up in my random thing yesterday when I was the voice assistant. Like I say, I keep, it's not like I'm really pushing these things, but, what can I say? Sometimes they surprise you, sometimes they don't. But it was an interesting collection that it brought up. I may try it again today when I'm making, lunch or something, and everything that comes up might suck, But yesterday was like almost perfect, and it was just drawn from really just different stuff, Very interesting. So, yeah, follow your bliss and, like the title card says, freedom is fun. And that really should be your goal, is to follow your bliss and get free and not be encumbered and have these, this weight of debt and problems over top of your head. Because, I'll tell you, as much of a struggle of it is, and my life right now is a struggle. For example, I've had to deal with this leaky roof situation. Who the heck wants to have to empty water trays and trying to fix patching holes on a roof? And then have these weird health issues that you're like, what the heck's going on? Or have this issue with a dentist that's like, I didn't want to get into that anymore. But despite the daily struggle of life, right, being free, is still way better than being in some kind of rat race and having these things over your head, It's just, there's just no comparison to that, that feeling to know that you are free, You just hope that you don't, you just hope that you have more better days than bad days as far as, the human body is concerned, or as far as for some people, the hassles of the bureaucracies and the corporatocracy. Because that's another thing. Like I said, with a health insurance, I get this letter and I had to make this call, and you're on the phone for this, or you're making an appointment, or you have to be somewhere, you want to do something. And it's like, it's like freedom is fun, and you have to pursue freedom at all costs, and the only way to do that is to break away, like I say, is detach yourself as much as possible from this corporatocracy. Because otherwise, kind of swirly thing that's taking you into that black hole, if you look at the background of this freedom is fun graphic, you're just going to get sucked into a black hole. And you don't want to be there. And that's what it's like. I don't believe in black holes personally from a physics standpoint, but I mean, the analogy from, works for what I'm trying to say. And you know what I'm saying. And a lot of people feel trapped, and they feel like they're just getting sucked down a black hole, or they can't get out. Something's pulling them and holding them in place. And that's why I've got freedom is fun in the foreground there. And that freedom and fun should be coming even closer. You see, boom, coming out. Because the more you get out of that black hole that you've been caught into, and that they want to put you in. And the they is this, this greed and power corporatocracy, that just, they're people obsessed, the self-proclaimed elitist. They just caught on this on power trips, right? Has nothing to do with, they just want to control, and they get off on manipulating people, controlling people, and watching us suffer. It has to be that. There's no other explanation for it, because it's not the profit motive. Companies have made profits for years, right? and they can continue to make profit indefinitely without, without basically poking at you. You know what I mean? And like stomping, like I said yesterday, stomping on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? Because that's all people want. I say, for all these people that criticize the founding fathers, like I was watching a show yesterday. Actually, I'll tell you, it was Roswell. I was watching that stupid, show on Netflix or something. And this like third season, they really got into this, like, these issue things. And there was one line like in there, like 250 years ago, that people have been oppressed, meaning like the founding, like as if the Declaration of Independence was a document of oppression, and the Constitution and stuff like. It's like, no, it wasn't. It was an instrument of freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yes, it was for everyone. And because of this revisionist history, there are literally half of the people, a generation, 2 generations. Like I was trying to explain yesterday, people up to if you were born 1980 or something, that's 40 years ago. And so people in their 40s, because don't have no cognizance of, that's how long that the school systems have been changed and the bureaucracies have seized power and, and the banking systems have changed from like, local banks. They got rid of the savings and loans and stuff like that. And so these people don't know any better, right? And it's sad to watch that, when you think it's like, no, you don't get it. Life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness, man, that's the greatest phrase of all time, practically. I mean, there's a lot of great phrases. Follow your bliss is another good one, which I just mentioned a couple times. But yeah, freedom is fun. I have that on a shirt. Get it. Get it on a hoodie. It's cooler weather now. Cold weather now here. I'd like to order a hoodie. I have a shirt. I have shirts. I have all these shirts. You've seen me wear my various shirts. And I have the Game Over hat. I think you can see. Let's see. Yeah, you can see it over here. I wear that sometimes on the show. But yeah, I have all the shirts and stuff. But I don't have the hoodies, and I wanted to order a hoodie because it's cold outside. And I have this ancient hoodie that I've had for a long time, but it's like, it's been washed so many times. It's like flimsy. It's like a sweat. It's almost like it's a sweatery type of thing. I need to get like I sell some really good hoodies. Well, you could see one here, but I have even on the, right here above me, the Then What one, which is a good phrase too. The title of my most recent book, but it's a good phrase. That's one to make people think, because that's the whole idea. It's like, they make these promises and everybody's caught up, or people who are, like I say, people who hold up these signs and stuff, the protesters and all this stuff. We want this, we want that, and the answer, so when they do that, the answer to that is, then what? Right? Or we need to get it's like this election, you got this guy, in office, right? It's like, then what? And I was saying that back then because that's when I was writing my book. I was putting together the early parts of it prior to this, and these shows began. But yeah, then what? People keep thinking there's some utopia. It's like this climate conference and stuff like that. Oh, we're going to reduce this, do that. Then what? Then what? What are you going to do about this? Is that going to make volcanoes stop, erupting and spewing ash and cooling the planet? Is that going to stop the sun? We've got tomorrow we've got a couple of CMEs. We've been getting hit back to back CMEs, right? Is that going to stop the sun? No, it's not going to stop volcanoes. No. So, see, then what? That's the phrase. It's like, I don't pick these things that I have on the screen and leave them there, for lightly. You don't know what you don't know. That's an important thing. Game over. It's like people need to come to that realization. But it's not the end of the world because freedom is fun. But you got to understand it's game over when it comes to politics and all that stuff. All right? The corporatocracy's in power. It's not giving up, right? By looking at reality and accepting reality. The answer to, when I say game over, the answer is freedom, is fun, is to detach yourself from it. Once you realize everything you know is wrong, which basically is because everything they've taught you is wrong, and you don't know what you don't know, but you pretend you know, but you don't know. And that the corporatocracy is in charge, and above them is this international, basically organized crime syndicate. I mean, that's really what it amounts to. And no single thing, like I say, I read on the news, there's people like, oh, great, governor, governor's race, this, that. 2022, 2024 election. What? Nothing's changed, really. I mean, we're beyond the point of any of these things. It's game over. Any of these things changing your reality. All right? And I guess the best way is, what people don't understand is a politician, when you have an abscess tooth, how's the politician going to help you? I have dental care in my health care, but it doesn't cover, not everybody accepts it. So I have to pay out of pocket for dental. Unless I go to some risky dentist or something where I could end up dying, right? Because they're not prepared if they try to do an tooth extraction and it breaks off and there's pieces in there. And you see what I mean? So there's no politician, you can offer free health care to the people who are living below the poverty line. And I have free health care. I've still told you that before. But it's not, you can't, it's not accepted by everybody. Right? So how's a politician going to help you if you got a tooth problem? Or forget about even whether the cost of health care, right? Because technically they can't turn you down at an emergency room or something like that. Understand that. So, they'll just send you the bill. And, you have this bill and, well, you don't, what are they going to do? They're not going to, put it in collections. Right? So the point of the matter is politicians aren't going to, a politician isn't going to suddenly make you healthy. Right? A politician isn't going to make your roof not leak. A politician isn't going to stop the sun from having a CME and taking down the grid. A politician isn't going to help if this, we've had, Mount St. Helens, and we have volcanoes that are like, there's swarms of earthquakes going off here in the U.S. right now. So if we get one blow here, Well, a politician isn't going to, stop the flow of lava from a volcano and the destruction of 2,600 buildings. What politicians going to what? Declare a national emergency or something like that and send some funds? Well, they all do that. So, people just don't, they look to politicians and they have this cult of personality with these certain people as if they're instruments of change or they're going to fix things. And I'm just saying it's game over, man. The corporatocracy is in charge. And it's like, that's why to me, I'm more, what I would be more happy with is if they would add AI to voices, to these voice assistants. Yeah, that's what I would prefer. Quality of life improvements and just more fun. Freedom is fun. Living at the poverty level, has its ups and downs, but mostly, unless you get ill. But I mean, even if you're wealthy and you're ill, it's still the same thing, I've known wealthy people who got, like I told you, I knew a millionaire had a root canal and died. So his millions didn't save him. Politicians, get sick. There's no, people look to these the so-called officials and leaders, and they have this cult of personality, the politicians, the elite. I never understood that admiration, like the worship of, of movie stars, pop stars, politicians, like as if they're somehow suddenly, they go from being the person that just comes from some small town, and because they're a politician, now suddenly people are like nervous to be around them or look up to them like they're somebody special. They're just a person. I've encountered so many people like that over the years. I told a story about I used to drink with a congressman who I knew before he was a congressman, and we just drank and talked. But how other people reacted and responded to him was really funny and comical. And I could remember when I was in Hollywood and stuff, and I would be, hanging out with some actresses or, other people, and how people would be like just in awe of somebody. And, and people would say to me, if I were talking with someone, who was what you would call a movie star or something, and they would say to me, it's so refreshing that we, to be able to talk to somebody and have a drink with somebody who isn't like awestruck or like caught up in some, some worship star thing. And, it's the same with politicians. It's like people look at these people, and then you see this picture of this guy who's the guy, the guy, and he's like falling asleep, at something, and it's like, yeah, that's basically. Oh, there's a cat. Come on, I was wondering what that noise was. You want to make it through here? Come on. People are going to see your tail. See the tail? Did you see that tail? Oh. But it's like, one of the takeaways from him falling asleep, which he did, let's face it, he's done it before. I don't care. I would have fell asleep at that speech too. Right? Bunch of people talking idiot talk about, the complete opposite of what's happening with the planet, right? talking to, making up this crazy thing. But yeah, he's just a guy. He's just an old man, right? And they chose him because, they knew he'd go along with everything for them because he's half out of it, or, he doesn't care. So, that's the thing. So it doesn't really matter, and waste your time. The shaking wasn't an earthquake. That was the cat jumping and shaking the computer. The camera's on the computer. It's just that's why the quality of this isn't the greatest, because it's an older Thunderbolt monitor. It's a big monitor. Good monitor. High quality. Plays back, probably like 4K capable or whatever. But the camera in it is like 720. I'm pretty sure of that. I don't know if this is going to take up my, let's see, about this Mac. Sometimes this like takes my CPU way up. I don't know why. But let's see, displays. Intel graphics. It's a 27-inch monitor, which is pretty big. Overview. Display, storage, memory, support. I mean, I don't care about storage. Memory. I do have 16 gigs in this thing. Anyway, yeah, that did take the CPU. Just checking that, my CPU usage shot up to like, now it's going down, but it was like up to like 9-10%. Just for checking out that. But nowhere in there does it tell me. It didn't tell me what that camera is. I'd have to open up the manual, which that definitely would probably have to be yanked from the cloud. Or maybe it doesn't even exist because this is older. It's like one of Apple's favorite things. They just have dead links. There's no reason for them to end things. They just do that so that you have to buy new. Right? It's like, these software companies do it too. You bought this software. So what? You bought it 15 years ago. And so they destroy the link for you to, like, if you had to reinstall it. Like if this, I hope it doesn't happen. If this G5 on the other side, my sound effects computer, this one.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
If this thing ever, died on me, crashed. I mean, I have the files backed up, but I have Photoshop, InDesign, and some programs on there that I own and I installed because I had the box and the CD. But when you're doing the installation process and you put in the serial number, which I have, right? What it does is it goes to the Adobe website and like confirms it. That it's a valid serial number, okay, or something weird like that. There's some process where it goes up and comes back and says, and then it's on. So I tried putting this on another computer, and it wouldn't let me do it because they closed that relay, page or whatever that was supposed. That gives you the signal. Even though I own the software, I purchased it. I paid money for it, and I have the box and the CD, and the file and the serial number and everything. They're pricks like that, So, one of my ideas was, I keep thinking, but it's not going to happen. I would like to clone. I wish I could clone this hard drive onto an SSD solid state drive. because it's an old hard drive, because that's what would crash. I don't think the CPU is probably good for, a few more years at least. But, hard drives crash, and I've had hard drives crash on me before. And again, I don't care so much about the content because I have backups, multiple backups of all my data. But what I care about are those two programs because I wouldn't be able to install them anymore. So there's no reason why someone should take something away from you that you own. I mean, that's one of these things, that's like I say, the Constitution giveth and terms of service taketh away, or whatever, these big tech companies. Like, if you bought an old Mustang, or you inherited a car from somebody, some classic car, and it's in your garage, whatever, depending on where it was from, Chevy, Corvette or something or whatever. I mean, or whatever. Was that, did the Chevys make the Corvettes? I think. Was it? But I mean, GM or, whatever the case may be, Chrysler, Ford, they don't come and take when you decide you're going to fix your Corvette or Mustang up and take it back on the road, they don't come and take it from you or come and disable it, right? You see what I mean? It's your property. You bought it, It's like, your Frigidaire, it breaks and you get a new condenser or something. They don't restrict you and say, threaten a repairman with, jail time if he puts in a new whatever, heat exchanger or whatever the heck it is. It's crazy. So why in the software world? And that's that's one scary part about the virtual world, AR, VR. And even like I was talking about Meta a couple days ago, and I'm all for it, and I'm into AI. I think this is the way to go. But I don't like the idea of terms of service, of their rules that go against natural law, kind of. The idea of, freedom, just our freedom. They're infringing upon our freedom. And that's why, it's another reason why I say game is over, because that's not going away. And like I've said on many times, and I'm not going to rant on it, but the bureaucracy is so entrenched. It's like I said, this people call it the swamp, but it's not the swamp. It's an institution, it's institutional, massive bureaucracy with tentacles in every tiny little village and town throughout the entire country, if not the world. And no cult of personality, no hero politician is going to dismantle something that has been building for nearly 100 years, or actually probably longer. Because you go back to these, the big money guys, the Rockefellers and stuff like that, they go back. And it's funny how that they, those type of people are never pointed to, for, when this revisionist history and all this stuff. They're the ones who were here, and there's the ones who were, in J.P. Morgan and, all these. People don't look at those type of individuals, like Mellon. Because, they have all this, they do philanthropy, they have foundations, and certain things. And so, which are basically, from their standpoint, are just tax shelters and promotional vehicles, right? It's PR and a tax shelter. And so people think, oh, okay, they get pass. But they're the ones that all these people protesting and stuff should be pointing at. So it's the elite, the ruling class, so to speak, the self-appointed ruling class of, these billionaires. I mean, they're the ones that are, these people on the street should, the protesters should be protesting against. I'm just against protesting and all that kind of stuff anyway. Colder than room temperature. It's all an exercise in futility. Freedom is fun. You've got to pursue freedom somehow, right? And the best way to get along is to just detach yourself from the corporatocracy the best you can. It's the only way. Otherwise, you're going to get sucked into this black hole. And it's a trap. And there's still going to come a time in your life when you're going to, we all get old and we all get sick. Right? The inevitabilities of life. And so, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when I say pursuit of happiness, to me, that's, quality of life. Because you're not happy unless you have a decent quality of life. And I don't know why people aren't pushing for quality of life. But instead, they seem more concerned about politics. But politicians don't improve your quality of life. And politicians end up, maintaining the status quo for the most part. They all have their signature things that they've done that people can point to, excuse me, for better or worse. You could say Obama is remembered for Obamacare. Some people think it was great. Some people think it's was the worst, right? Some people look at Obama and think of him as the guy who, was responsible for the rise of ISIS and all his drone bombings, right? Some people look at, Bush and, they see the Patriot Act as a good thing. Other people see it as taking away our freedom. Some people see weapons of mass destruction and him going over there as getting even for 9/11. But the reality is he attacked the wrong country, and never got the people who did it, really, because, well, A, they either killed themselves, or B, the whole story's been so clouded and stuff, and eventually, then they when they catch the guy under the next administration, they burial at sea, nobody knows, right? Yet they televised the hanging of Saddam Hussein, who didn't have weapons of mass destruction. I mean, the guy was a dictator and all that stuff, but I mean, you see what I mean? This whole idea of politicians, and it's the same with Trump. Someone will say, well, excuse me, he helped change the VA, but then there's other people that say the VA still has problems and vets are still, committing suicide. Other people will say, well, yeah, the wall, but the walls is now not complete, and it's being, the parts are all rusting away. And in the meantime, over the next several years, probably 10 million more people are going to come into the country. And at that point, it doesn't really matter. You see? So it's game over. And so everybody, it's like two views of the same, cult hero or politician or political party. They want to say, well, this, and it doesn't matter. That's why I just, the politics to me is ridiculous. Yes, you can make a list of things, pros and cons for certain individuals and certain accomplishments that people have had. But, those, you can name those things, basically on a sheet of paper. But as far as the bureaucracy and the institution, the corporatocracy and this organized crime syndicate that's like kind of running the world, not kind of, is, those lists of positives or negatives from some political cult leader, they pale in comparison to the control and manipulation that this bureaucracy, the institution of running this planet and country, it's just, there's no comparison. And so that's why I tell you, it's a corporatocracy, it's a technocracy, whatever you want to call it. So you've just got to get yourself out of that mindset and stop wasting so much time on that. And, I've woken up to it because I guess maybe because I've had some health problems and I've seen the absurdity of certain, obsessions. They became meaningless. I've also noticed that when I've taken time off of things where I've, for other reasons, where I just haven't been paying attention to something because I was preoccupied with whatever. And then I go back when I used to watch the news, and I go back, and like I've said before, it would be the same story. It just would be the names have changed and the place is different, but it's the same story. And I think a lot of people just don't see that. Or they'll look at these stories that they have legs, so to speak. That's what they call it. They used to call it. That are just like they cherry pick some kind of thing that they think that, oh, this one will work. We could roll with this one and we could milk this for, weeks, months, maybe a year. They pick those things. And then it's funny how everybody picks the same story then. Like that never make sense to me. It's like when I was talking about all there's 19,000 homicides a year, 20,000 homicides a year. Most of them are unsolved. And they pick, periodically in the course of a year, maybe there's like 1, 2, 3 particular people that the news media will focus on for months, a couple of months or a month. Or in case of like last year, for an entire year, they were focusing on one out of 19,000. As if those other, those 19,000 people's family, friends, and all that stuff, they didn't matter. But they picked that because of some demographic profile and some kind of, thing that they figured out through big data, right? Big data gives them the answer and says, yeah, we know. That's the beauty of big data for media and for corporations. That's why it's so valuable a commodity. Because it's predictive, it's like Minority Report. It's predictive behavior. They know so much about you and everybody that they can predict how what story will work, what won't, what, this, that, the other. And the illusion that we have are the elections, because they're exercises in futility. In other words, it's like, I have a line in one of my songs, and I think I had it on one of my title cards a couple weeks ago. Something about you are not free, something about, excuse me, predetermined outcomes. So that nothing happens, by chance. Most of it's predetermined outcomes. Even the elections yesterday, that was a predetermined outcome. And there were people that knew that, things are allowed to happen. They're permitted to happen. And, I mean, it's not to say that there aren't occasionally things that, like ground swells or something that happens, grassroots type of things that rise, but never on a scale that are ever going to have any kind of, reach any kind of level of toppling these millions and millions of people who are in this bureaucracy, right? You just can't, you're not going to change that. And at the same time, like I say, what people have to understand is that, we're going through a time where we have these earth changes where the sun is, is starting to just, looks like it's, these predictions I've been talking about and others have been talking about are going to come true. And at the earth, and despite this climate crisis stuff, the fact of the matter is it has nothing to do with CO2 or 0.004 CO2. It has everything to do with the sun, our magnetic field, the Atlantic, like I said before, the slowing down of the Atlantic conveyor, cyclical activities. And, so, those things are way more important. And we may be, because we might be standing on the precipice of extinction or a near extinction event, or, what about those 2,600 people on La Palma lost their homes? And these things, and, and other activities, floods, fires, storms, all that stuff. It's like they love to blame this, find a scapegoat for something. So they have this, they create these bogeymen, right? And so climate crisis is like something they could blame, right? Because for some reason, I don't know, maybe it's like, why is that? Why do they have to blame? Look, hurricanes have been happening since the beginning of time. Tornadoes have been happening since the beginning of time. Forest fires have been happening since the beginning of time. They're not increasing. The temperature of the planet has fluctuated since the beginning of time. So, it's like, the cycles of life, when you look at the long-term cycles, it's clear. When you look at short-term or you cherry pick numbers, yeah, you can make anything. Like I say, figures lie and liars figure. You know what I mean? You can create a presentation in sales by using a graph. Like I say, you can use raw numbers or statistics. They did that last year with this thing, right? Where the numbers seemed big and scary, but when you looked at the percentages, if they would have used percentages, it would have been meaningless. So the people who were saying, hey, man, you're overreacting because 99.98% of the people are doing fine, aren't going to die. 99.99 in some instances, 99.98 in other instances. But instead, they just gave these raw numbers and people go, oh, wow, look at all these people dying. But it's like 2 million people die every year from, various health things. Leading cause of death is still heart disease. The second leading cause of death is cancer. So, every 10 years, like 20 million people die of health. The minimum of 20 million people in the U.S. die of health reasons. And that's not old age. These are like diseases and that could be prevented. If the government really wanted to be involved in something. 20 million people, but every year 2 million people. But they don't, they don't push that stuff, you see? They only want to do things that they could benefit from. Like this has been a profitable thing. Big Pharma is making a fortune on this thing. And it's been going on for 2.5 years, according to U.S. Intel, right? That's been reported, right? That this, the Chinese knew about this thing last summer, And U.S. officials knew about it in the intel community. You know, right? The director of intelligence and the former CIA director are on in a documentary, Sky News documentary interview, admitting that. So it's like 2.5 years. This thing, you know, these things don't, and you know, and they're both were all pointing to bioweapon possibility. You know, so I always say, you know, are they keep pushing this out? You know, are they keep releasing it to keep this thing going? Because the natural course of events of these things, you know, from a standard point of view, is that they usually fizzle out. But I don't want to get into that. I don't know that for sure. And these guys were non-committal, but they were committal. And you can watch that you can watch that interview on Sky News where they talked about it. So, you know, all of these things, you don't know what you don't know. That's what I'm trying to say. And everything you know is wrong. If you went through the indoctrination school system over the past 40 or 50 years, mainly 40 years, the last 40 years, when, you know, when they started to implement all of these, like or there were more administrators than there were teachers, right? When curriculum was like put through an administration building instead of a teacher basically getting a book and creating a core, you know, presenting what they were going to teach in the class, right? Doesn't work that way anymore. Now they're told, right? Curriculum is this, that, the other. And there's this universal curriculum that, you know, if you want to get your federal and state money, you have to, you know, do this, and you've got it. And they test the kids to see if the kids are answering the questions right, meaning to make sure that the schools are teaching the curriculum that, you know, the indoctrination curriculum, to make sure that that's what they're being taught. I mean, as simple as that. So it's indoctrination, conditioning, and when you get out of school, it's nothing but propaganda on the media. And so you got this world, right, this country, where everything you know is wrong. You don't know what you don't know. And that's why I'm saying your goal has to be freedom. Freedom is fun. You got to get free and accept the fact that it's game over. Detach yourself as much as you can, you know, from these people. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. There's nobody on right now, but I mean later on. And as I've been doing for the last, well, just the last show, but we'll do this for a while. Get a shirt, you get the book, go to Great Solar Stuff, go to ROCKFLUX.com, look at all my stuff. Give the stuff as gifts if you don't want it for yourself, or do it because you want to help me out. Okay?
Elvis has left the building. Thank you and good night.